Hi, this is my folio1 reflection. Across these weekly exercises, I explore different ways of thinking about observation, systems, objects, and place. While each task has a different theme, I gradually noticed a shared interest in how perception can be constructed, shifted, or even manipulated. For the first week, I focused on the idea of observation. Instead of just observing the environment, I become interested in a subtle psychological shift, the moment when observing starts to feel like being observed. To explore this, I created an interactive web piece. Where multiple eyes follow the viewer's face, the eyes are actually an image of my own eye, so the guise is not coming from others, but from myself. What this work explores is the idea that observation is not non-directional. When we looked at the world, we are also part of what can be seen. This connected to the ideas like the panopticon, where the possibility of being watched change how we perceive ourselves. To week 2, I worked with the idea of tinkering through a small interactive game. At first, I approached code simply as something to experiment with, but as I kept modifying and fixing the system, something unexpected happened. It started to feel like the system was responding to me, or even playing with me. The game has multiple possible endings, and players can explore different outcomes depending on how they interact with it. Some of these outcomes intentionally disrupt expectations or created confusion. What I found most interesting in this process was this shift of control from me making the system to the system influencing both me and the player. This experience made me think about how simple machines can create a sense of being misled or tricked, which is something I'm very interested in, especially in relation to narrative. This connected to work like the Stanley Parable or Inscription, where interaction itself become part of the narrative structure. For week 3, I explored the idea of found objects. I created a 3D object using industrial material like pipes and webbles, and tried to transform them into something organic like a plant. Originally, I planned to place this object into a real environment using AR, so I would appear as a large-scale industrial plant embedded in the city. However, I wasn't able to complete the AR pipeline in time, mainly because I'm not familiar with Apple's ecosystems and the technical process was more complex than I expected. Because of that, the final outcome didn't fully achieve my original intention. But I think this was still an important part of the process. It made me realize that context is crucial. Without the intended environment, the object loses part of its meaning. Conceptually, this work explores how industrial forms can imitate organic ones, and how meaning is shaped by context rather than fixed in the object itself. In week 4, I explored the idea of place. What interested me most was the idea that environment exists before the character, and can still carry meanings when people are absent. I created a series of images by removing people from photographs. But instead of simply erasing them, I add text into the empty parts. Unlike Loy's work, where the text represents a person's intentional feelings, in my work, the text represents the perspective of the place itself. So the environment becomes something that speaks or reflects what has happened there. Through this, I explored how place can imply presence, memories, and human activities, even without showing any people directly. For week 5, I worked with object-oriented ontology. I started with a simple idea, the life cycle of a balloon. But as I developed it, I realized this way of thinking was too human-centered. So I shifted my focus from narrative to relationships, things like air pressure, gravity, and time. The balloon is not a fixed object. It changes depending on conditions, and its identity is not inherent but assigned. This project helped me move away from thinking about what an object means in a narrative scene, and instead consider how it exists in relation to other forces. Looking back at folio1, a key theme that emerged for me is the instability of perception and control. Across these projects, I kept returning to the idea that what we say, understand, or believe is not fixed. It's constructed and can be shifted or manipulated. The word I found most interesting was the Week 2 game, because it revolved how easy a system can mislead the player through very simple means. This connected strongly to my interest in narrative deception, creating situations where the audience believes they understand something, only to realize that the logic operates differently. I also noticed a shift in my thinking, from focusing on outcomes or finished forms to paying more attention to systems, relationships, and processes. Moving forward, I want to apply these ideas to my own creative practice, especially in interactive storytelling. I'm interested in design experiences that intentionally guide, confuse, or trick the audience, using perspective, interaction, and structure. Rather than presenting a clear and stable narrative, I want to explore moments where understanding breaks down, shifts, or becomes uncertain. Overall, folio1 helps me realize that meaning is not something that is simply presented. It is something that can be constructed, negotiated, and even disrupted.